Hey everybody, yet another replay in the Mogami, this time on Islands of Ice. The enemy team once again outnumbers, but we have a carrier this time. Both teams have 4 battleships, the enemy have 3 Fusos and a Congo. We have, what's that? Looks like 2 Fusos, a Warspite, and I think that's a Nagato? Yes it is. We've got 2 Pensacola's and 2 Mogamis. The enemy have a pair of Clevelands, 2 Pensacola's, a New Orleans, and a Yubari, curiously enough, and both teams also have 2 destroyers. Now this guy, if he'd turned to his left, he would have turned inside my turning circle, we would have hit each other, but instead he decided to turn to his right, directly across my front, and being of course a much bigger, heavier ship, I couldn't stop in time. Pay attention to where your teammates are turning, and bigger ships have the right of way, always. More inertia means more right of way, quite frankly. Anyway, since the map is on the domination game mode, and since I spawned up north, I decided to head towards point C. Not necessarily to cap it, but rather to see what comes there and shoot it. Point C usually ends up being a cruiser playground. You can see one of the Pensacola's following me, as well as one of the other cruisers behind him, second Pensacola in fact, and our Ranger is heading up north. C is pretty decent for cruisers and destroyers to play around in. There's enough space to maneuver, but there's also enough cover to prevent long-range fire support from battleships, which is of course something that you want to avoid getting hit by in a cruiser or a destroyer. And right away we managed to spot one of the enemy Pensacola's coming, as well as a number of planes. Meanwhile, our Mogami heads to the south, into the A point, finds the enemy destroyer down there, and one of our destroyers heads into the ice field around the A point as well. The other one appears to be heading straight for B. Since I've got the support of 2 friendly Pensacola's, I decided to just charge straight in at this guy. He's already taken a bit of damage before I get my shots off, well, ones that'll hit anyway, and then he takes a shit ton of damage from a good Citadel hit there.
The enemy team has taken the lead.
It looks like he's going to try and run, which I would like to prevent him from doing. I put in another broadside for a lot more damage, second Citadel hit, but then the enemy Sims appears. Now, I'd like to deal with him before he can get a chance to launch torpedoes at me, but I also don't want to let the Pensacola drive up alongside me and get any more shots into me than I absolutely must take. So I finish him off with a final broadside. While the Sims is unspotted and in cover, I decide to fire off another broadside at the approaching Cleveland before refocusing on the Sims. The Sims is of course the pre-order tier 7 premium US destroyer. It has really fast reversing turrets like all the high tier US destroyers. It's pretty agile, but like most US destroyers up to about tier 7 or 8, it has really short range torpedoes. It's better at dealing with other destroyers and cruisers using its guns than it is at actually torping things, unless it manages to ambush them, and in this situation it's certainly not an ambush. It takes me a few shots to find my mark, but I eventually do, wiping out most of his hit points in a single salvo, and then there goes the finisher. There's actually quite a lot of enemy ships spotted now, and most of them are heading this way.
Our team has taken the lead.
There's at least one of the Clevelands approaching, probably both of them, and a Yubari, curiously enough, sitting in the middle of an open channel. Now he actually doesn't look like he's moving, or if he is, he's moving at maybe a quarter ahead. He's really not going anywhere in a hurry. I don't know if he thought that his guns are more accurate when he stopped or something, but I can tell you right now they're not. And so as he begins a painfully slow turn, I'm able to put a huge amount of damage into him, while taking only a little myself. One Cleveland comes flying around the corner, and this is a serious problem for me, because this Cleveland could easily finish me off now. Puts in a lot of damage, while my own shots barely scratch him, because they weren't very well aimed. I decide rather than blazing out to the open again and getting finished by him, I'll stop behind this iceberg for a moment and just see what my torpedoes do, as well as consider what I'm going to do next. Pulls out from behind the iceberg, and before he can get another salvo off, my torpedoes finish him. A good result. However, I now have a whole bunch of ships coming this way. The two enemy cruisers coming up through the middle are a Pensacola and a Cleveland, both very dangerous to me. And I've also got the attention of the enemy Congo, at least somewhat. He's turning this way, although his guns appear to be aimed back towards our Sims. And indeed, he manages to blow the crap out of the Sims. We do have 3 of the 4 points at this stage, but the battle isn't going too well for our team. The enemy are pushing in force towards C and D, forcing our ranger to run away to the east, and meanwhile an enemy battleship has started capping B, and there's not much we can really do about it. We do have ships down there, but they're cluttered around the icebergs in A, which is maybe not the best position to try and fight from. You can see here the Pensacola is actually putting shots after me. I'm surprised he didn't kill me, I thought he was going to. But I'm able to pull behind the iceberg and get away from him. It's at this point I decide, not very smartly, to begin firing on the Fuso, hoping to whittle some hit points off of him while I wait to either close range and get some torpedoes off, or find the carrier. The Fuso is reversing for some reason. I'm not sure why. It's not a really good idea. It makes you an easy target because you don't reverse very quickly, and it takes you a while to change back in forwards motion, which it appears that he might be doing here. Simple way of telling the direction of the smoke coming from the smokestack. I don't think wind is modelled in the game at all, so if the smoke is going forwards, it means they're reversing. Fire off a couple wide spreads at him, not expecting a hit, but it would be a nice bonus. Instead, I shift my attention to the carrier, but unfortunately lose my eyes on him almost immediately. And now I've got a lot of shells coming my way. The New Orleans is now firing at me, as well as the Fuso I managed to piss off. Looks like my torps aren't going to hit anything. And with the carrier still invisible, magically, I decide to engage the New Orleans. Unfortunately for me, I turn myself into a corner here. I do actually get a hit off my torpedoes. It looks like the Fuso may have driven into one. But there's no time to rejoice. I've got to try and either deal with this guy or find a way to get away from him. But fortunately, the Congo finishes me off. In the meantime, the enemy team have captured points C and B. We only hold A and D now, and our team is pretty spread out.
The enemy team has taken the lead. Now remember, the way that points work, whenever you destroy an enemy ship, you gain points. Whenever they lose one, they lose points. And so even though we were holding most of the points for most of the game so far, the enemy are able to make a quick recovery by killing a bunch of our ships in a hurry. And there goes another one. You could see the points dropping off of our counter and going to the enemy counter. Now we do still have a full health Warspite, and a Mogami with enough hit points to do some damage. Unfortunately, we just lost our other battleship. And it looks like our Pensacola is not in the best position to assist the Mogami and the Warspite in this engagement. In fact, the Warspite's probably having issues with gun range as well, not to mention the icebergs blocking his shots. If you look closely, you can see that our Mogami has only got 10 guns. That's because he's running the 8-inch gun upgrade. I say upgrade, I think it's more of a downgrade. The saturation of 15 shots versus 10 and the higher rate of fire mean that the 6-inch guns, the 15 6-inch guns, tend to be a more flexible option. However, at this range, 8 inches are certainly going to be useful at handling battleships. And he gets some damage into the Fuso before turning to presumably dump torps, and there they go. 4 triple tubes, 2 each side. Looks like the Fuso might actually go down, which might just be enough to get us a chance here. Unfortunately, the Mogami is being focus fired now. The enemy cruisers and extra battleships are arriving on scene. He does manage to take out the Fuso, but he's now surrounded and in a very precarious situation. Now, curiously, he turns to the right instead of the left. He could have made a turn to his left to reverse his course and bring all of his guns to bear in a hurry. Instead, he elected to turn right and traverse his turrets from one side to the other. Not the decision I would have made, but at this rate, it doesn't really matter anyway. Meanwhile, Warspite has been caught with his guns trained the wrong way, and in the Warspite that's a serious problem because it takes them 72 seconds to traverse from one side to the other. And he's also travelling very slowly. Now, as far as I'm aware, he's not flooding, which means that he's deliberately moving this slowly. I don't know if he thought it would make him more accurate or what, but you do not want to be going this slow in a battleship. It's just suicide. The enemy is about to win. And as you can see, he's getting dunked on by the enemy cruisers, and there's not much anyone can do to help him. Our Pensacola is in a really, really bad situation there. The Warspite's lost pretty much all his health. Any moment now he's going to go down. But with his final salvo, he's able to take out one of the enemy cruisers. Unfortunately, it's just not enough. The enemy still have a carrier, 3 battleships, and 2 cruisers up. All we have left is our only Ranger up in the northeast corner of the map. There's not much he can do about this. We're down on points, we're down on ships, and he is an aircraft carrier. What's more, it looks like he's rearming his bombers, so any hope for a quick kill to buy us some time is well and truly off the charts. Now, one thing that's worth noting about the Ranger while we're here is that these funnels are actually designed to fold down when the carrier is launching and landing aircraft. The little walkways on either side fold up, the funnels fold down to avoid smoking the crap out of the deck, obviously, and avoid causing a hazardous obstacle, and the little hatches close over the top of them. Pretty neat. Not animated in the game yet, but maybe one day.